What happens to a person when things are too easy for them? Forrest Galante actually has a really, really, really cool insight that he brings up here on the Joe Rogan Experience. This is episode 1927. We're at 1 hour, 1 minute, 9 seconds. I'm Coach Colin, coolest high performance coach in the world. And if you want the absolute best insights to the podcasts and videos you love, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it.
Much vastness.
Graham Hancock thinks there was 20 million people living in it.
20 million?
Yeah.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
He thinks it was a vast society.
Wow.
It was filled with human beings and structures, and this is all being like, they have only used LiDAR in a very small percentage of the Amazon.
Of course, yeah.
And they're showing all sorts of structures and irrigation systems and grids that indicate cities and blocks. It's wild stuff, man.
I mean, it sort of makes sense in the sense of the abundance of resources down there, right? It's easy to grow a population when you have so much natural resources. Everything that you plant grows. You know, there's another side of that argument that I've heard paleontologists make, where like when things are too easy, people don't evolve, right? That's a different side of that coin. But if you think about it from like a logical standpoint of when things are easy, it's easy to increase your population. And, you know, when you're not fighting for survival every day because there's coconuts and palm trees and blah, 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 it's easy to reproduce and have more kids and grow a society.
Yeah.
Versus when you're spending half of your life just trying to get by.
That's an interesting argument, that when things are easy, that people don't grow or evolve. That seems weird to me, because it would seem to me that once your resources were taken care of, once you have food and shelter, you have more time to think. So you have more time to make life convenient, more time to sell goods that would be valuable to people, more time to improve and innovate on those goods.
But the argument is, when things are too easy, you don't push the status quo. So because there are so many abundant resources, you have no need to develop tools and technologies that advance society. So the argument, I don't remember the scientist that said this, it's basically if you look along the band of the equator, those are at this time, and this is an older publication, I believe, those were the least developed societies in the world. As you get further away from the equator, you know, up into the not the Arctic, but like up into Scandinavia and so on and so forth, you get more and more advanced civilizations. Because when there's a hard winter coming, or it's just harder to survive, even though there's abundant resources, you need to adapt and overcome and develop in order to prepare for that winter, in order to prepare for a famine time period, versus when it's all just available to you at any time.
The reason why that doesn't make any sense is Egypt.
Sure. Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense, because that's the absolutely most sophisticated culture pre what we understand of history.
Yeah, true. But not on the equator. It is quite far from the equator.
It is far from the equator, but it's also like very lush.
Very.
Like the Nile Valley, they think, 9,000 plus years ago was like extremely lush.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why they were able to reach this high level of sophistication. Sure. Because they had access to resources.
Which aligns with the idea that the Amazon had the same thing.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, by the way. I think that if you have an abundance of food and resources, you have a better ability to create.
Yeah, that's what that makes more sense to me, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think both things could exist.
I agree.
Like, you could have it too easy, or you could have it to the point where there's plenty of food to hunt and gather, and you see no need to move out of the hunter-gatherer stage.
Sure.
But then you could also see like super sophisticated societies that lived in that area, like they think the Amazon was.
Right.
That they would innovate.
Totally.
Yeah.
See, here's the thing with that clip, and that's such a great insight that Forrest brought up, because I think Joe is kind of forgetting the fact that even in episodes that I've done, I have, clips of him talking about the reason that he still does hard things. He still makes sure to do really hard workouts. He talks about in episodes about making sure, like, he introduces his own hard shit into his life, because if he doesn't, things have become so easy. He's a millionaire. He's at the top of his field. He's at the top of both of the fields that he's in, stand-up comedy and podcasting. So he makes sure to introduce really hard shit that he has to do every single day. The cold plunges, the sauna, the hard workouts, the jujitsu, everything. The bow hunting, he makes sure to have all of that in there. And it's in order to give himself something that he needs to improve in. So not quite evolution, but it is keeping him it's keeping him in a state where he has to push through certain things. So I think he's forgetting that part. But also, I mean, like I brought up at the beginning, when things are too easy on a person, and we'll take it away from a society and bring it to a person, because personal development, right? When things are way too easy on a person, they don't want to move out of the stage. It's comfort zones. If somebody stays within their comfort zone, they become so conditioned to it. Everything's really easy. They get really comfortable. And then the next thing you know, they get really lazy. They get really lethargic. They don't want to do much because they don't have to. Whereas if you have a hard life, like I've had, I'm sure people have had harder lives, but I've had a hard life. And I had to do things like, pull myself out of, a 6th grade reading level when I was in my 20s. I had to learn how to use a computer. I had to force myself, because my surroundings were not easy and very negative. I had to learn to do a lot of things. I had to learn how to speak. I had to learn how to speak to people. I had to learn how to read people. I had to learn how to use cameras, video, all this stuff was completely, because things were so hard for me, I had to constantly push myself to evolve in certain ways. I'm actually a very introverted person, but you'd never know it because I'm on YouTube and I got cameras and I talk to people and I coach people and I speak and I do all this stuff. But that's only because things were not comfortable for me at all when I was introverted. I'm the weight that I am now because things weren't comfortable for me when I was fat. Now, if I was really fat, this is a great example actually. If I was 350 pounds like I was, and I could get girls, and because a big reason why I lost the weight when I was younger is because I wanted to, I wanted to lose my virginity. I wanted to go do stuff. But if I got girls, if I was praised for the way I looked, if I didn't have to watch people, excel in sports while I couldn't do that, if I didn't have, and then also had abundance around me in terms of food and resources to just eat as much as I wanted all the time, which I didn't, my family got into a worse economic state as time went on, just because things changed. I probably would have stayed fat. There would have been no reason for me to lose weight. But because things were not easy, they were so uncomfortable, I had to evolve past where I was. I had to lose the 200 pounds. I had to learn how to work out. I had to learn what health was and how to eat properly and how to sleep properly. I had to learn all of that. So, just if things are too easy for you in your life, and you'll know if they are, because you know what's easy for you and what's not, that could be the reason why you're not pushing past certain barriers that you feel are in front of you, because the life around you is way too easy. You're too comfortable. And even going back to when I brought up the economic situation in my family, that actually forced my mother to figure out how to run a business. I remember things got really hard for her. She got fired from a job as a secretary, and she had to make a decision whether to get something that was comfortable or to move into something that was uncomfortable, which was starting a business. She chose to move into the uncomfortable thing. That pushed her forward. She had to learn how to speak to people. She had to learn how to close deals, how to do sales, how to do all this stuff. And it worked and it worked and it worked. And then she had a flourishing business. But if she didn't get fired and she stayed in the comfortability, she would have still been at that job to this day. Maybe, she wouldn't have had a reason to start a business. I don't know. I was just thinking of that because it makes so much sense. And you see that in the family as well. If a family is really well off, and this doesn't always happen because sometimes rich families will stay richer and they do that by pursuing more. And a father lays that out for his son and his son grows the business and all that stuff. But sometimes if a family is just mediocre and there's no reason for them to change and all their relationships are good and they're getting everything they need, it's why would they ever strive to start businesses, to build industry, to get to the top of their field? Why would they ever think of doing that if things were just fine around them? It goes back to that. So many times people have said it, that whole thing of pressure. What does pressure do to coal? Pressure makes diamonds. But it's true. you know? Or what do people also say? Steel is forged in fire. That thing. Or maybe I'm saying that wrong. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like, you need things to be hard in order to evolve. You know, I think even Jordan Peterson says something about how there's a lot of you, like the best version of you, in your genetic code, and you have to be put under certain pressure and you have to do certain things for that genetic code to like express. And it's so true. Like, it's so true. Again, I would have never lost weight. I would have never started businesses. None of that. If everything was just good, if I had a father if I even had a father around, let alone one that just took care of me and like paid for everything, I wouldn't be doing this right now. I'd be working a regular job because I'd have this very comfortable life and I would just strive to keep that comfort going. Whereas when things are really hard, you're striving to make things better. And then that becomes a habit. And then you keep striving to make things better, even when they're good. And that goes right back to what I talked about at the beginning with Joe Rogan. Even though things are immensely good in his life, he still finds ways to make things hard. And that keeps him feeling like he's progressing, makes him feel like he's still evolving. So I think Joe kind of forgot that as he was hearing Forrest talk about that, because he had it so applied to a society. But a society is made of people, and people only evolve when there's stresses put on them. You know, we only get better when there's stresses put on us, when we need to get better. And that's it. Peace.